Welcome back to Smart Life. You know, the haters, they're experts at bringing you down. But don't fear, the cheeky scientist here to help us with the haters we encounter in our everyday lives. Dr. Isaiah Hankel is the cheeky scientist from cheekyscientist.com. Dr. Hankel, welcome back to Smart Life. Good to have you.
Hi, Dr. Gina. Thanks for having me back.
Happy to have you. Now, we are dealing, it seems like on a constant basis, not only privately, in the workplace, in social groups, but also on the national scale. We're dealing with some real classic bullying happening from politicians, clear down to probably a lot of our own workplaces or schools. What is your best advice to folks who want to really flip the tables on these bullies and teach them a lesson or two?
That's a good question. I think the best advice is to understand what they're trying to do, try to see things from their point of view. And if you understand kind of what their tactics are, you'll know how to deal with them a little bit better. So, for example, haters, they're really good at kind of subtly attacking you or kind of eroding your enthusiasm, for example. A lot of haters want to tone you down or take away your excitement for something. And they might do this very subtly just by kind of giving you a dig or saying something negative and then saying, just kidding, or doing something passive aggressive like that. So even just the knowledge of that happening and knowing what that is can help protect you against kind of the long-term effects of negativity.
How is it that we've come to a place in our history where it just seems like the bullies are constantly winning? You know, you watch, and I will give one example that I think where the bullies didn't win, and that was the recent Duck Dynasty thing, where it seemed like the bullies just kind of got a taste of their own medicine for once. But by and large, you know, if people say ugly, unkind things to one political party or the other, then it seems like it's the one saying the ugly thing that the public opinion kind of goes with.
Yes.
And this harkens me back, and I wrote about this in my book, Ladies and Gentlemen, this harkens me back to what happened on the playground. It was the mean kids that seemed to get the attention of the rest of the kids because they were afraid of becoming the next target. Is that what's really going on here psychologically, Isaiah? And then what can we do to shift our thoughts to be more productive?
I'm really glad you brought this up because I've spent a lot of time collecting research on this topic, and it's actually biological. So you asked why is this negativity so prevalent? Well, our brains are actually made to lock on to negativity. And there's studies that have shown that it takes 12 seconds for our brain to store praise or something positive into our long-term memory banks. But with negative information, it goes right through a part of our brain called the amygdala, and it's stored instantly in our long-term memory banks. So if you think about it another way, we are 12 times more likely to recognize or remember something negative than something positive. So we have to fight against that harder. And other studies have shown that over time, being around negative people or even watching a negative TV show, or, you know, a drama or trash TV, it actually peels away neurons in your hippocampus. They've done studies where they've had people watch like the Real Housewives of New Jersey or something, have them take a test afterwards, and they do worse on the test than people that watch a neutral TV show. So it's really twofold. One, we're biologically designed to lock onto negative information, and two, once you're around negativity, you actually make worse decisions afterwards.
So let's talk about that for a moment. So you make worse decisions immediately after, but what happens as you continue to erode that part of your brain called the hippocampus, which is very important in all life aspects? Tell us what happens long term to these people who tend to dwell on the negative.
Right. So it's really the best thing to compare it to is an infection, and we've had people in microbiology who have got together with other people in behavioral psychology, and what they found is that negativity really is like a virus, like an infectious agent. And so they've done pretty cool studies where they've taken a positive person and put them in a group, in a social situation, and kind of monitored everybody, and they've taken a negative person and put them in that same group. And through a series of experiments that are similar to that, they found that for each positive friend you have in your life, it increases your chances of being positive by only 11%. But each negative friend you have in your life, it doubles your chances of being negative.
Oh,
so that's the difference you're dealing with.
That is fascinating. And I've watched this as a sort of a student observer of all things psychological like you are. I get a kick out of watching it. And I've noticed that I have a very close friend of mine who a couple of weeks ago, her 16-year-old daughter died in a car accident, and I've watched her be just extremely positive, not in a denying way. She admits the grief and she's going through the process and she talks about that on Facebook. But also, she posted something today saying, "Oh, I got the saddest card," and she's like, "Where's your hope, people? Let's focus on things." One thing she posted, I think yesterday, said something about it was the first day that she wasn't having to nag her daughter to get out of bed and do school, and she said it's the first time in many years I haven't had. And she said the great thing for her, and she's probably happier about it than me, is that there are no desks in heaven, no school desks in heaven. I thought, who could even write that? That's so positive. How do we go if we are negative people? And if you're a negative person, because people will tell you, I've told many negative people in my life, "You're too negative. I can't stand it. Back off." So if you're negative. If you are, though, one of those negative people, Dr. Hankel, how do you change? How do you make that transition?
Right, and really, like you just alluded to, it's all about kind of your habits and changing your psychology and changing the people you're around. One of my favorite quotes is that you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most,
I love that.
and that's absolutely true. But it's also your own actions and what you're doing. And we know now that you can change the way your brain is connected. You can change the neural pathways in your brain. There's a really cool study that they did with London taxi drivers that looked at their brains and a certain part of their brain that controls kind of their spatiotemporal, being able to see locations and basically being able to see a map in their head. That part of their brain is much larger than the average person. So we can change these different parts of our brain, and what we can do is we can get in the habit of storing positive information by focusing on that more. Whether if it's 12 times longer, whatever it takes, and then staying away from negative information.
I think it's true. And I hate to say it, but minimizing the role of the negative people in your life, the people who are constantly cutting you down, the people who are constantly calling to attention the negative, and as you pointed out, the sarcastic people in your life too, because there's a whole lot of truth in sarcasm. So people will say, "Oh, something horrible to you," and they say, "I'm just kidding, joke, joke." And the bottom line is there's an element of truth in that, and it does cut us. To the degree that people say things like that. So minimizing those personalities in your life and emphasizing the positive personalities in your life. But what exactly, how do you call that person out? If you're uncomfortable, maybe you're not used to confrontation. I'm a little more comfortable with confrontation than probably your average person, since it's sort of what I've done for a living for a long time. But Dr. Hinkle, how do you tell someone, say it's your spouse or your boss, how do you tell someone, you got to cut out the negative, you got to cut out the sarcasm. It isn't building and growing our relationship.
Right, and before that, even I think doing some work on yourself and also being like, okay, is this person actually being negative against me, or am I being too sensitive?
Oh, that's an important question.
You've got to be able to make good decisions too, because
Yes.
you don't want to just be a crybaby, right?
Right.
Those people are annoying too. So that's the first step. But then, just be willing to be vulnerable and open up and talk. There's a lot of studies that are going on. There's somebody named Brené Brown who's done some great studies on vulnerability. And what that comes down to is just being able to sit down and talk to somebody openly about how you feel. And not openly, again, in a kind of crybaby way, but just very directly. As in, these things really bring me down and they take away my energy, my fire, my enthusiasm. Is there a better way that we could communicate? Or what do you mean when you say this? Just start asking questions, and I think you'll be happy with the answers you get.
Yeah, I really like that. And I really like, Dr. Hinkle, that you pointed out that, take a look at the plank of wood in your own eyes, so to speak, because I think a lot of us are super sensitive in a world that fires at us really hard all day, every day. And so we get home and we're the most sensitive and the most irritable, a lot of times with the people that we're the closest to, and even the ones that we love the most, that the relationships mean the most to us. So it is important, I think, to take a look at those kinds of things. Dr. Hinkle, just for going forward, what is your best advice to people in terms of just really turning the table on those bullies that are out there, especially the ones that are kind of in the media telling us what we should think all the time?
Yeah, and I would say, number one, I would always say, always start with yourself, like you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Focus on you, and don't worry about what other people are saying. See if you can just get rid of that negative information by not paying attention to it.
Right.
That's step one. If you can't, if it's in your face and you have to deal with it, then I would deal with it directly as possible. I would pick apart exactly what's going on and say, okay, this seems pretty passive aggressive to me. You made me feel this way. we might not be able to hang out anymore if you keep going down this path. And that would be the second step. And
I think
really,
that's good. I think that's good.
those two
Dr.
prongs.
Hankel,
Yeah.
remind us how we can find you because you've got a lot of this stuff on your website.
Yeah, so you can just find me at isaiahhankel.com. That's my main page, or you can go to cheekyscientist.com.
Thanks so much, you cheeky scientist. Happy New Year to you. We
Happy
know
New Year.
that
Thank
our
you.
kids, thanks, Isaiah. We know that our kids have to deal with haters too. So, what can we do to make it easier on them? Or, heaven forbid, what if your child becomes the bully? How can we fix that or prevent it? Parenting expert and clinical psychologist Dr. Dathan Paterno, my own co-author of Ladies and Gentlemen, joins me next to tell you just how to do all of that. Stay with us on Smart Life. More right after this.